Hellhounds, chase ghosts, come sleep, watch out, demons are coming, run, sleep, hide, spirits, ghosts, hide, demons, hellhounds, ghosts, demons are coming, spirits.
Hello, my little hellhounds. Welcome to Home of Scares. If you like the chills running down your spine and to be scared, fueled with anxiety, then join us twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And don't forget to increase your anxiety levels. Just make sure you subscribe. Sleep tight, my hellhounds. Tonight, my little hellhounds, we have a mix of subscriber stories submitted to r/homeofscares. I could feel its burning eyes, submitted by Jebathon. I used to live in a very old house. It was very large, but very cheap, as many people were too creeped out by the way it made them feel when they visited the property. On the house tour, the realtor was feeling so bad, he had to leave early and continue another day. Since I have 2 other siblings and we wanted our own rooms, it was the best home to go with. On the first day, all of the rooms were chosen by rock, paper, scissors, and lucky me, I got the creepy attic. I myself love scary stories and often feel paranoid after staying up until 3 a.m. Also, reading scary stories on my phone. I love the thrill that would disrupt the normal day-to-day activities. Many days when I was in the attic, I would hear the surrounding wood creak around me. Even when the smallest bit of wind blew, the house would cry. Sometimes I would swear I could hear footsteps, but think my mind must be playing tricks on me. The attic didn't even have a door for privacy. It was straight up the staircase. In my sizable but mostly empty room, the creepy closets all around that I sometimes swear would open on their own in the black of night. But on one night I knew what happened was real. But who would ever believe me? I stayed up late watching creepypasta videos online until about 2 in the morning. Then I turned out all of the lights to attempt to sleep. The old creaking throughout the old house kept me awake for a while, but I soon heard creaking that was different. It was the bottom step. My eyes were wide open as I lay there motionless. I heard it creaking up even more. 2 steps this time. I laid there for a while as I heard it ascending the steps, taking more and more steps, all while my heart was jumping around in my chest. Finally, it stopped at the last step. I just couldn't bring myself to move at all. I was too petrified. My eyes closed faster than ever. My body laid dead as a log. Nothing. I peeked my eye slightly. Nothing. After a while of waiting and feeling it watch me, my curiosity got the best of me, so I opened my eyes to see the creature. Its ghastly grey skin, wide open and large alien-like eyes, a motionless expression. Its long and spindly arms and legs. On all four, it sat there, unaware that I knew of his existence. My breathing was as even as I could get it, or else it might have known I was actually awake. After a while of sitting there, it moved fastly up my wall and onto the ceiling. I couldn't see it anymore. I sat there, waiting. I couldn't just go to sleep, when all of a sudden I felt it. Its cold finger touched my cheek. I jumped in terror and sat up as it stared at me for half a second. Then it jumped down and screeched at me, chasing me down the steps as I desperately tried to get away from it. I finally got to my parents' room and proceeded to lock it behind me. I quickly went to shake them awake, but then there was no response. I shook and shook, nothing. I pulled the blankets off to see their insides splayed across the sheets, blood soaked into the surrounding mattress. I froze in horror as it started banging at the door, each time more violent. Finally, I just blocked off the door and went into a trance-like state. Next thing I remember is the police somehow making it through my barricade, their horrific faces as they saw me, a 13-year-old kid with only skin and bones, and my parents partially decomposed and stinking. I was sent to the mental hospital for the crime of killing my family. At this point, I'm starting to believe maybe I did. A very scary story submitted by Enthused Hawk. Okay, let me tell you a story that happened to me when I was 10. There was this old house, reputed to be haunted. Me and my friend wanted to check it out at night, so one day both our parents went out at night, so we decided to visit it today at 10 p.m. We took flashlights and went to this haunted house. When we opened the rotten door, we smelled the smell of death, like rotten iron and dog shit. The house was horrible. We went up to the attic after visiting all of the house. My friend lifts me up and I pull the rope as hard as I could. It opened and something was off. Nothing came out of it. The house was old, but the attic door didn't throw the dust it had to throw since it was old. That meant somebody opened it lately, but we didn't care. We went to the attic. The moment we went up, we saw 4 boxes with videotapes. I took 4 random ones. I was scared and couldn't keep up, so I just took 4 random ones. I was about to run away, but my friend told me in horror, "Look at the red flashing dot." I turned around and found the red thing, he said. I took him by the hand and ran faster than Sonic. "You tripped on something." So we fell from the stairs. Pieces of wood scratched us, but we ran home. We saw the numbers of the videotapes: 45, 9, 3, and 6. We got random tapes. We ran the 45 one and we saw an old man in a house. It took us 4 seconds to understand it was the house we were in. The guy was screaming a name. We kept looking and we understood 2 things. The first is that the man was looking for someone, and the second is that the red dot was a camera. At the last 3 seconds the camera moved, like someone took it. We ran the 9 tape and 3 ones, but they were just broken. The 6 one was the camera of the same old person returning for some reason. He was running and the tape stopped. We waited 5 days before returning to the house. We went at the day, and to our curiosity, there were only 3 tapes on the ground. We took them and ran. We ran them and found out that the tapes were of us. The same cameras were filming us. We saw ourselves run to take the tapes, but when I tripped, there was nothing on the ground. The cameras had night vision also, and I clearly saw someone kick me from behind. A kick so gentle I didn't feel it. It was a man behind us. He stared at us while we were running. It was a really scary experience, like other creepy shit I had in my life, but at least this one. Footsteps and open cabinets, posted by Lady Nifilibata. So this happened about 2 weeks ago, the night before. Now, I don't go to bed late. I try to avoid going to bed past 12 because of the fact that weird things happen in my room in the early hours of the morning, and I prefer to be asleep when such things happen, but because I had to wait for hot water from the geyser, which was an hour or so, instead of going to bed at 10, because I read until 11, I got to bed at 12 and was eager to just sleep. So as I laid in bed, I heard these footsteps, and I knew it was in my room because of the carpet. The room drew dark as usual, and I laid still. Now, in this situation, I usually ignore them and try to get some sleep, but they were moving weirdly. They would walk from my walk-in closet to the side of my bed, then quickly shift away, then repeat the motion over and over again. But I eventually did manage to sleep. But the next day, morning after, I got up and got ready for the day early because my friend and her kids were coming over for a day of shopping. As I reached the bottom step, my friend texted me and said she was outside. I invited them in for breakfast before we hit the stores. As I was preparing breakfast for them, the little ones decide to join me in cooking their eggs. I heard a funny sound and turned to look around the kitchen, but seeing it is a kitchen, I didn't take to mind until I turned to open the cabinet, but it was already open, and the one cabinet down by the sink flew open and the dishes fell out. But because I had the children with me, I laughed it off and got them out of there. Beneath Our World, posted by Bloody Spaghetti. Most scary stories feature some kind of dramatic event or a monstrous encounter. Some may feature an encounter with a violent criminal or a heart-seizing near-death experience. Mine is different from all of those. My scary story is entirely comprised of nothing but a mundane trip to the catacombs located underneath my hometown. The scariest thing that has ever happened to me was not life-threatening or even dangerous. I'm pretty sure that the things that keep me up at night aren't some inhuman creature or a traumatic event. No, the things that haunt my nightmares are the emptiness beyond the vacuum of space and an awful vision of something people shouldn't witness. What terrifies me the most in this life has no explanation. It has no reason or rhyme. It has no point to it. My story begins with me descending to the aforementioned catacombs for a typical walk. I have roamed around these underground streets for dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of times, for as long as I can remember. Either around some part of the city under my town. These catacombs are mostly concrete walls with some sewage pipes running through them. There is nothing inherently scary about those halls. The concrete walls do not produce monsters that attempt to tear the skin out of the unfortunate fool that veers into their subterranean lairs. While the catacombs are fairly dark, a typical flashlight is usually enough to illuminate a safe path for those who wish to traverse the chthonic passages. That's how my evening started. I descended into the nether realm that serves as the foundation upon us, which my hometown stands. I aimlessly walk around the endless halls, unbothered by anything external, my flashlight acting as my guide across the vast space ahead of me. I guess I took a turn I've never taken before at some point. That's how I managed to get myself into a part of the catacombs I've never seen before. The halls looked the same as they did everywhere else. There was something about them, however, something different. There was a soft humming sound coming from somewhere in that part of the catacombs. The sound was pleasant, and I felt a little compelled to follow its trail deeper into the underground city. My curiosity was piqued somewhat, since the whole place was usually deathly quiet. I was intrigued to find the source of the humming sound. Thus, I made my way towards what I felt was the source of the noise. I walked for a bit before being stopped in my tracks by a drop of cold water hitting the top of my head. I remember looking up and seeing a leaking tube. I paid it no mind and pressed on, deeper into the unknown. The longer I went, the louder the humming had become. In no time the humming seemed fairly close. I thought I had figured out where the humming came from. I decided to press on to find the sources of the sound. I picked up my pace before stopping dead in my tracks once more. Once a drop of water landed on my head. Looking up, I've noticed another leaking pipe above me. Nothing of this one much. I pressed on. I walked for what must have been a few minutes, and while the humming had gotten closer and definitely louder, I couldn't locate the source. By that point the humming had turned almost unbearable. It was hurting my ears. I've given up on finding the source of the hum and decided to head back home. I took what must have been 3 steps before feeling a drop of water land on my head. I looked up and saw a leaking tube. Something felt wrong. I mused the possibility of walking in circles, but quickly gave up on that thought. It couldn't have been the case. I was walking in a straight line the whole time. The pipes around this part of town must have been in a dire need of repair. I decided to keep on walking back home. Then another drop of water landed on top of me. Shivers ran down my spine. I looked up and there was no leakage. I felt it, however, the drop of water land on my head. I ignored it and decided to pick up my pace, reasoning that I was getting tired. It was night time after all. Not a minute later, another drop of water fell on me. Shivers ran across my skin again. My heartbeat started rising. I was getting worried. I didn't even know why. Instinctively, I picked up my pace to a jog. I ran for a bit, and then another drop of water, and another, and another, and another landed on my body. Every few meters a drop of water would land on top of my head, sending searing shivers through my skin. I didn't even know why. With each time my heartbeat grew faster and my breathing became more laboured. The longer I ran, the more frequent the drops of water had become. Eventually, I felt like I was running in the rain. My heartbeat had skyrocketed by that point, and my vision had become narrowed to a point where I could barely notice what's ahead of me. The room seemed to grow hot with each passing moment. I felt the sweat make its way across my body. Each breath I took in, it felt like I was inhaling acidic fumes that would surely corrode my lungs in no time. The sound of water tapping was everywhere. I think I had gotten myself soaked by that point. I didn't care though. I wanted to get out and go home. I don't know why I didn't scream or call anyone or anything. I guess I was too caught up in the weirdness of it all. The space all around me started spinning soon enough, and I felt as if I was starting to get tired. My movements became sluggish and hard. My legs turned heavy, like I was becoming slowly encased in concrete. The thought of getting stuck in some unknown substance in these catacombs sent my mind reeling. I focused on pushing through whatever was holding me back mindlessly. Thankfully, a dry, pained moan shook me awake out of my self-induced trance. I felt like I was electrocuted. When I felt it, my body jolted and everything shook, twisting and turning for a second before turning still. A cold, wet substance caressed my body. The heat wore off and the heaviness of my body started dissipating. My head felt light and the light of my flashlight turned a little dim. I didn't have a care in the world for a second. I was floating in the vast cosmos and letting myself drown in a sea of dopamine that was flooding my nervous system. My chest felt heavy and everything started spinning beautifully around me. The light of my flashlight bursting into a beautiful circular dance above my head. I was losing the feeling of my limbs. My body felt so light for a moment, like it wasn't even there. The feeling of weightlessness felt delightful. I was losing myself in some sort of unearthly pleasure. That is until something violently shook me, forcing me to open my eyes. Something was a pale girl, paler than any human has the right to be. She was so pale I could trace all of her veins as they ran beneath her skin. She was screaming at me while shaking my body as hard as she could. We were underwater. I was. The girl's eyes, they caught my attention, sapping all of that pleasure away and turning it into fear. Her eyes, they were so misted. A thick veil of cataract material covered the blue shade of her eyeballs. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears as my blood raced through my arteries. Pins and needles ran across my body, and she pushed me above the surface of the water. I heaved and thrashed. Once I realized I nearly drowned. I took the deepest breaths I've ever had. I didn't care about the air smell, how the air smelt and tasted like sewage waste. My body screamed at me to breathe. I just floated there, taking up as much air as I could. I was confused and disorientated. I had no clue how I got into that water. On top of that, the insides of my skull were starting to pound, like I was struck with a hammer. 30 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. No one came up. The girl didn't come up. Not thinking, I dove under the water again, looking around. There was nothing there, nothing, only muddy water. My heart sank, and I pulled myself back up, above the surface of the sea of waste. There was no girl. I was alone. I heard that dry, pained moan again, coming from behind me, shivers running down my soaked back. I turned around, shining my flashlight at whatever was behind me. The light, it went nowhere. It just got sucked up into nothing. A form of pure pitch blackness, a complete nothing. A black hole stood in front of me. Every cell within my body started as the dread slowly built its way up my nervous system. I simply floated there, frozen in space, as that thing, that absolute darkness, floated in front of me. I couldn't do anything other than simply stare. The black hole seemed to have the water curved around it into the form of a hooded figure. The sight was ingrained into my brain. I think the black hole was moving towards me as the light ray seemed to grow shorter with the passing moments. I didn't stare at it for too long, but I definitely saw it getting closer. Once it was about a couple of inches away from me, something tugged at my back, startling me even more, causing me to lose my balance and sink underwater. Once I resurfaced, gasping for air once more, and shaking like crazy, I looked around, but there was nothing there. I was alone again. The black hole had vanished. The light seemed to travel across the hall as I shone the flashlight all over the space. As I was finally gathering myself, something screeched in my ear. I didn't even have to turn. I just swam as fast as I could. I needed to get out. The further I went, the louder the screeching had turned. I couldn't stop, and I couldn't turn away. Whatever was behind was awful. I knew it. I knew it deep down. I knew that if I'd slow down, I'd be done for. So I swam, and then I ran, and I didn't stop until I got home. I nearly concussed myself on my porch when I got home. I was so relieved that the awful experience had ended. I neglected to notice my footing had gone awry. I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was the catacombs. I couldn't wrap my head around that experience. To this day, I have no idea what happened and how it all turned out. I don't even know what I've seen there. I'm still clueless about how I lost my way or how I ended up in a pool of watery waste, and what I've seen. I don't even know what the girl was. Thinking about her makes my skin crawl. As for the black hole thing, I couldn't get the visual of that all-consuming black mass out of my head. It kept plaguing my mind over and over. It ended up driving me to a point where I had to get wasted to be able to shake it out of my mind. Get it out of my mind for a short time, that is. I ended up drawing the body of pure darkness as I witnessed it, an empty mass covered in a peculiar shaped liquid. Waste stream floated around it. That certainly helped, even though some nights I still dream of walking down a dark hall and into a murky pool where I end up being attacked by a girl's corpse. Every time I have this nightmare, her cold touch feels so real, and her blue clouded eyes force cold sweat to run down my skin. One thing is for sure, while I don't know what happened in those catacombs, I will admit this much: I am afraid of the arcane darkness that dwells just beneath our world. I could see it through the mirror, posted by Carly K's 008. Hello everyone, this is going to be my first time posting about an experience of mine to this thread, or any thread really. I'd like to start off by saying that I've had loads of experiences throughout my lifetime, but the one I'm about to share with you is the one that stands out above all the rest. The year was 2011, and it was my 21st birthday. I don't remember much from earlier in the day. All I can remember is my boyfriend at the time and myself went to my parents' house to see them and spend time with them for my birthday. During my visit with my parents, I noticed that my mother seemed really off. The facial expression she carried seemed far away, like her mind was elsewhere, but her body was there. I do need to point out that my mother and I were extremely close. She was literally my rock, the most important person in my life. I remember being there for a few hours. We had cake, ice cream, and took a few pictures. I didn't know it then, but eventually I'd come to realise that would be the last picture I would ever get to take of her. I remember getting ready to leave and kissing her and hugging her goodbye. The last words she ever spoke to me was, "I love you and I will see you tomorrow." But sadly, before tomorrow came, she passed away in the middle of the night due to a brain aneurysm. I would later discover, a year or so later, that she was aware that she was terminally ill and fought her battle in mostly silence and alone, only choosing to tell her mother, who has also passed in recent years since. Fast forward about 3 months after she passed, up until this point I've had a few bizarre and otherworldly experiences, but this one takes the cake. My partner and my roommates all worked at the same place, so they worked the same hours, and I was the oddball out. I worked second shift for a local restaurant and wasn't expected to be at work until 4 p.m. on this particular day. I am asleep in bed when I am woken up by my alarm clock. The time is around 2 p.m. I wake up and roll over to hit the snooze button and turn back over to fall back to sleep. When I turn over and close my eyes to drift back off to sleep, I am startled by the feeling of someone's hand nudging me softly on my arm through my blankets. Naturally, I was instantly terrified. I knew I was home alone, and that what was happening to me right then should not be happening. It wasn't logical. I remember feeling the heat from fear rise in my cheeks. I couldn't move. I thought that if I just laid there and ignored it, it would go away. But oh, how wrong I was. It just kept nudging me. So I gathered the strength and willpower to sit up in my bed and see what it was. But when I did, nothing was there. I don't know what possessed me to look, but my eyes shot directly to the mirror in my bathroom. My partner and I stayed in the master bedroom of the house, which means we also have a bathroom attached to our bedroom. The way my room was set up, you could easily see into the bathroom. As my eyes locked onto the bathroom mirror, I could see perfectly a dark shadow figure slowing, what looked like levitating, making its way across my mirror, as if it knew the only way I could see it was by looking through the mirror. When I saw it, it's as if all time stopped. I couldn't believe what was happening to me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And most of all, I couldn't believe I was deliberately being made contact with by something I didn't understand at all. Whoever or whatever this was wanted my attention, and it wanted me to know it was there. This has been the only time I've physically seen this entity. Is there anyone out there who has had similar experiences or any other experiences with shadow people? Thank you for reading. I have many experiences to share and will share more if it is so desired. I'm not sure who I had empathy towards, or if I had none at all. Posted by MTP6921. On a warm, full day, I decided to participate in a small community yard sale with a few of the ladies in my community where I lived. One of the people who stopped to look at the fabrics that I had hanging up looked really familiar to me, but I couldn't pinpoint where I knew her from. She was in her 60s, but she looked older with short grey hair. She was a bit taller in stature and reminded me of an old nun that didn't take crap from anyone, but she didn't give off a mean demeanour either. Two of the ladies who were trying to get rid of their old unwanted items with me had worked in healthcare as I did, and between the three of us we had worked in every healthcare setting in the area, so we knew just about everyone who lived around us. The three of us looked at this woman like we did to most people who had stopped, trying to figure out if we had seen her in our professional lives. Eventually I blurted out to the woman, "I remember you from Laurel Manor," meaning I remembered her daughter who used to be a patient in a residential setting called Laurel Manor. The woman said all she used to want was almond milk. As she said that, I got a better image of her daughter in my head. The same woman said all she used to do was, meaning her daughter, was flail her body around like this. Then the woman demonstrated by bending her trunk forwards and backwards, then side to side in a fast motion. Then the same woman said in a cold manner, almost like how a woman who would talk about an alcoholic abusive husband. Yeah, I had to get rid of her. All she did was scare me when she flailed around all day and called out for almond milk. The woman continued to look at the fabrics in my hastened, perpetual nervous-like manner. I looked at her like, how can a mother talk about her disabled adult child like that? But picturing her daughter flailing around all day like she was possessed, I couldn't help myself from not disagreeing with her. Eyes on Me. Posted by Hard Rod 2. Last October, I went to a Halloween costume ball hosted at our local art gallery, which was organised by the Unitarian Universalist Spiritual Centre, whose members I have close ties with. It was a typical party, but had a few ceremonial attributes to celebrate Samhain. I dressed up as the Red Death from Phantom of the Opera and basically went alone, thus waiting for a friend who did eventually come to meet up with me later in the night. Before that, I've had the most bizarre experience. Bizarre as in, I was unable to imagine a clear explanation behind this certain circumstance. I still can't think of one to this day. So, after dancing to the music and sipping a couple of drinks, I was interested enough to purchase a photographic aura reading from this lady at a little booth. I sat down and she instructed me to take off my skull mask and firmly lie my palms on a flat silver machine linked to her laptop. I was then instructed to look into a camera, and after a few minutes my image appeared on the screen with a mix of transparent colours along with various measuring charts. I was further intrigued and listened to the lady's explanations concerning chakras and the like. As I was trying to pay attention to her, something in my peripheral vision distracted me a bit. I decided to look directly ahead, and to my surprise, a group of 4 sitting at a table was staring and smiling back at me. 3 men and 1 woman. If their expressions weren't friendly, then they were most definitely flirtatious. I can't recall if they ever blinked. I was a bit weirded out, especially since I wasn't wearing my skull mask. I didn't even think to wave back or say hello, so I just ignored them and listened further to the lady's interesting lecture, helping me examine my aura. At the same time, I couldn't help but feel being stared down from the distance. I looked ahead again, and it was the same group, checking me out. They just kept looking at me without even signalling for me to walk over to their table. I knew I wasn't hallucinating because I've blinked and the group was still there, not making a single move, to be honest. I swear I have never met this group before, so I really don't know why they were staring at me like they already knew me closely. While not making it a big deal, the lady finished up what she wanted to teach me. I paid her and just got up to go to the restroom. I just brushed off that stranger experience as nothing. Afterward, my friend found me and we just chatted until we had to leave for his mother's birthday outing. Interestingly enough, I then realised that the group never approached me after my aura session. I wonder what that was all about. Out of stubborn curiosity, I searched through the entire venue and still didn't find them. Good thing I didn't have to tell a man that I had teeth inside my rear end to scare him off. Well, that's pretty much it, and hopefully you are never as spooked as I was. Creepy Man, posted by Torbid Key 8. So this happened to me like 4 years ago, but I remember it perfectly. I was coming back home from swimming practice, and since it was winter, it was about 9 p.m. and extremely dark, since the city lights were kinda shit, and it just made the scene creepier. I was walking normally at a slow pace because you didn't have to do anything else that day. I noticed my shoelace was untied, so I went to tie it, and while I was doing it, I looked back, and the only person in the street was a middle-aged man towards 50 years old, with a very curious hat and a trench coat, walking slowly with his head low. When I got up and looked back again, there was no one there. The creepiest thing about this is that some time ago I was talking to my sister about sleep paralysis, and one experience she had was seeing that same man at her door, and I quote, as if he had just been in the street. The descriptions matched perfectly, and the time was about the same. This is definitely one of the creepiest things I have ever experienced. Well, that's it for tonight, my creepy little hellhounds. If you would like more subscriber stories, then don't forget to subscribe and drop a like and comment about your favourite story or any video ideas. Please follow me on Twitter at homeofscares and submit your stories to reddit.com/homeofscares. Now, good night, my little hellhounds.